Hello everyone, it's Connal Finlay here, the owner and director of the Cellar store down in New Zealand, and welcome to today's episode of the Cellar TV. So today what we're going to be tasting is one of the most iconic and important producers in all of Italy, especially up in Veneto, so up in the northeast of Italy. And so who it is Masi. So anyone that has ever tried any wines from Valpolicella before, especially the red wines, then they are probably going to be familiar with Masi. Masi are one of the most iconic producers purely because of the fact that they are absolute leaders in their Amarone. So this is their Amarone, this is their Costasera Amarone della Valpolicella, and this is from the 2011 vintage. So anyone that isn't necessarily familiar with Amarone della Valpolicella is basically what it is. It's a blend of the main grape varietals up there. So it's Corvina predominantly, got a little bit of Rondinella and a little bit of Molinara in there as well. So those are the three red grape varietals. Corvina is the most important here. And so what it is basically a lot of the, not 100% of the grapes used in producing this actual wine, but quite a large percentage of them are dried out, so a passamento or passito sort of style. So they are dried out, not necessarily to become a sweet wine, so not to that sort of extent, but sort of just enough to really sort of raisin them up slightly, dry them up slightly, which leads to much more sort of concentrated wines. A few of the water is sort of dried out a little bit, so you're much more concentrated in sugars, much more sort of concentrated in flavors and also in color as well. And so this leads to a very, very sort of full-bodied red wine, very, very rich, very, very complex, and quite spicy and quite interesting. And as I say, quite complex. With that being said, I'd like to point out, where does it say? It is quite a big wine. It is 15% alcohol. Mind you, that being said, if you're familiar with sort of Australian red wines and things like this, and quite a few things coming out in Napa Valley now, 15% is quite normal, but just sort of be wary that it is a little bit more sort of richer in alcohol as well. Anyway, so as you can see from that beautiful, beautiful color, it is very, very sort of dark and rich, sort of ruby color, which is just fantastic. Let's give it a little sniff. So straight away on the nose, you're getting a whole bunch of those beautiful sort of raspberry flavors, those sort of black raspberry flavors. There's a whole bunch of black plum, a bunch of black currant coming through here as well. And something that's really, really poignant to me, not just in Masi's wines, but in a whole bunch of different Amarones and also Ripasso della Valpolicella as well, is I really get a lot of these sort of coffee flavors, but also quite a lot of mocha and sort of chocolate flavors as well. But something that I always like to point out is that it always, in a way, in its own special little way, it's sort of like chocolate-covered coffee beans. And so it really does have that real intensity there as well, which is very exciting. So there is quite a bit of spiciness here, and there is those sort of coffee, those chocolatey sort of flavors, quite a bit of sort of clove and toasted cinnamon coming through as well. That being said, there is that real base of these sort of black and purple flavors, especially sort of plums, and there's really quite a bit, especially in this particular vintage, I have to say. More so than usual, there is quite a bit of black cherry flavors coming through. But they just work so well with the different spiciness and those coffee and, as I say, those sort of chocolatey notes as well. It really does work so well all together. Anyway, let's give it a taste. So it's definitely dry, though there is quite a bit, as I said, quite a bit of fruit sweetness here. And so that's largely due to the drying of the grapes. And so that does lead to that extra bit of fruit sweetness. It might appear a little bit off dry, but it's not. It really isn't. But as I said, that is that sort of fruit sweetness coming through, not actual physical sweetness, as it were. There was a little bit of acidity here, which is sort of just enough to keep it a little bit lively, but largely this is riding on a big train of just richness. Lots of textural aspects coming through here. That's largely due to the tannins. The tannins and a little bit of oak tannin here as well, because it does spend a few years in oak, which is very, very important to notice. And with that, it is getting quite a full body, very, very rich, quite drying. So I'd have to say that when I usually suggest this to people anyway, something like venison, a nice sort of slow cooked venison or a steak, things like this, quite big meaty, juicy sort of meals, dishes like that. Amarone, this particular Amarone anyway, pairs very, very well with that. But generally speaking, especially as it's opening up there, you are sort of getting much more sort of the black cherry. That's definitely coming through quite a bit, but also those sort of toasted notes, those sort of coffee flavored notes, they're really, really rising up. So I'm getting quite a bit of sort of licorice here, a little bit of clove, as I said before, I think, some toasted cinnamon that's coming through, sort of toasted cocoa bread, and things like this. In particular, as I said, a little bit of licorice, some spiciness. And there's, in the background, especially on the palate now, it's sort of dissipating the sort of main fruity sort of aromatics. They're sort of dissipating a little bit. But on the palate, there's a little bit of sort of like leather and licorice all sort of coming in together. So there is that spiciness, that earthiness as well. And so if you do like this big sort of rich and juicy red wines, especially from the sort of the south of Italy, then I have to highly, highly, highly recommend picking yourself up a bottle of Amarone. And as far as Amarone goes, Masi is one of the top producers in the world, and rightly so. Anyway, so this has been the 2011 Masi Costasera Amarone della Valpolicella. So please do, we've got all the, check it out, we've got all the information below. The link to our website if you want to buy a couple of bottles of this, which we highly recommend. We've also got some of their Reserva. I think that's the 2009 or 2010 vintage of the Reserva of the same wine, so Costasera Reserva Amarone della Valpolicella. So that spends another year or two in oak, which is very, very important. So that's even more sort of complex, even more sort of spicy and nutty and all the rest, which is very, very cool. So please do like away, comment away, that's much appreciated. And if you've enjoyed the video, please do subscribe, that's highly appreciated. We're always adding in new content every sort of week or two, which is very cool. And so please do share away with all your other wine-loving friends and family. As for us, cheers.